Does Frank butcher his own cow? No, I don't butcher my own cow. One day I hope to have a cow, I really do. One day maybe I will have a farm and I'll invite you all along to see it. But for now, I don't butcher my own cow, okay? I don't milk my own cows or goats. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I don't. Cows are really nice animals. Tasty, but really nice animals. I'm Frank. I'm a chef at the Institute of Culinary Education, and I've been cooking for 24 years. If you look at the steak, it has a beautiful crust on it now.
Lorenzo here, and I'm a level 2 chef. Does it look good?
Hi, I'm Anna, Senior Food Editor at Epicurious. So when I grill chicken, I like to build what's called a 2-zone fire.
I'm Julie, I'm a level 2 chef. I make steak once a month. I would make it once a day if I could, but health.
And I'm Rose, and I'm a food scientist.
And here are all the answers
To all of your questions.
About steak.
Spin it, and stop!
Okay, this is a good one.
Dun, 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 dun.
Is there such a thing as a good, well-done steak?
No.
I really don't like my steak well done.
You know, they're dry and they're stringy and not good.
But if you like that type of flavor and texture, well, of course it'll be good for you.
I don't think you ever need to cook your steak all the way to well done.
When you get it well done, it's pretty much all of the goodness and happiness is cooked out of that steak. So stay with medium to medium well. And if you don't like it like that, maybe you don't like steak.
Yikes. Think about it.
Okay, cast iron or grill?
I am not going to defer to either one here, okay? I love them both.
I love grilled steak in the summer and cast iron seared steak in the winter.
Well, in the summer, I say grill. In the winter, gotta be cast iron.
You're not going to have the grill out in the middle of the winter, so
If you live in a city and you don't have a grill, obviously it's cast iron. Cast iron is really nice because it makes full contact with the surface of the meat as opposed to a grill that does not.
I have very fond memories of my grandmother cooking my grandfather's steak in lard, in a cast iron pan at home. But there's something to be said for that grill, right? The grill gives it a different flavor. So if you're cooking me a steak in a grill or on the cast iron, I will eat either one.
All right.
Do people really touch the soft part of where their thumbs meet their wrists?
To determine the tenderness of a steak,
Or is that just a dumb myth?
because I don't know how you could determine the softness of a steak by touching yourself instead of the steak. Well,
There's a lot to unpack there.
Wow, you're confused, honey.
that is kind of a crazy question.
What am I supposed to do? The soft part of where my thumb meets my wrist?
Ask Frank. Frank, answer this one. You're good at this.
Usually if your hand is relaxed and you touch it, it's like a rare steak. And as you push your thumb towards your pinky, it gets firmer. If you touch this piece of meat and I press on it, it leaves a dent or a divot. It's raw. If you push on it, it gives you a little more spring back. It's starting to cook up to a medium rare.
Yeah, if your steak's in the skillet and you're touching your thumb, no, you have no idea what's happening in the pan. Touch the steak.
Use your hand as a reference point, but your hand isn't going to tell you anything.
I don't know. I think a thermometer works best for me.
Snap.
How do I determine the time I need
To rest the steak.
So I would say for something like this, between 2 to 5 minutes, basically.
At least 10 minutes.
Yeah, 5-7 minutes. I think everybody would pretty much do the same.
I think 10 minutes is a really good rule of thumb.
If it's sizzling, it ain't rested. If it's nice and warm but not room temperature, I think it's rested enough.
Next.
What is the red stuff coming out of the steak once it's cooked?
Is it blood?
I don't know what it technically is, but it's probably blood.
This is a food science question, and I'm not very good at that, so I'm not your girl here.
Rose, where are you, Rose? Can you answer for me, please, Rose?
It's not blood like you might have pulsing through the veins of the animal when it was still alive, but it is a combination of protein, a little bit of sugar, and water.
Thanks, Rose. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yowza.
How do you figure out which way the grain is going?
So you can cut against it.
For the most part, only the steaks with a very pronounced grain are ones that you want to slice anyway. A skirt steak, a flank steak, or a hanger steak have a very pronounced grain to them. The most important thing for this piece of steak is to cut against the grain. That's because if you cut it with the grain, it's just going to be super chewy. When you get into the New York strip and the ribeye, these are normally cut across the grain already, so you don't really have to worry about that. The grain of this meat goes up and down on this steak, so you don't have to worry about slicing. I probably would never slice a New York strip or a ribeye for presentation because the presentation is the beautiful piece of steak. Nope, spike fail.
What's the best sauce to serve with a steak?
A steak doesn't really need anything. It's so juicy and delicious on its own.
I'm not really a big fan of steak sauce or sauce on my steak.
If you need a sauce for your steak, you got some serious problems.
But I really like the taste of a good steak with kind of a blue cheese sauce. Gonna take my blue cheese butter. I kind of separated it and put it in between the slices because the first taste of your perfectly prepared steak should be naked.
But I do really love a steak with a Italian salsa verde.
Straight butter.
A chimichurri, a salsa verde.
I have a ribeye. Chimichurri is not touching it.
Is sous vide a good method for cooking steak?
It always looks so gray when it's done.
Even after searing, I'm not sure it's a good method.
It's a good method if you want to invest in the equipment. When you cook by sous vide, you need a vacuum sealer and you need a hot water holding vessel with a special apparatus that's going to maintain a constant temperature.
You can really control the exact temperature that the meat is cooked to all the way through.
But of course it's gonna be gray. You do need to sear it afterward.
And then you'll have a beautiful, delicious steak.
It's a good method though.
I don't think it's a good method for steak. It's a great method for things that you're gonna braise that are tough cuts of meat. I think that when you have steak like this, you've spent a fair amount of money on it, don't put it in a bag and don't sous vide it.
I just can't stand that floppy gray meat coming out of that bag.
Aside from wine,
What's the best thing for you to have with a steak?
More wine.
should I season my cutting board
Or my steak.
Definitely your steak.
I'm not cooking the cutting board.
But I've seen people season the cutting board.
And rubbing the steak on it. I think it's a good way to waste a lot of salt or waste a lot of seasoning.
I don't care how much you season the cutting board, it's still gonna taste like wood.
Season the steak, people. I mean, how hard is that?
I season the steak. That's my answer.
All right, here we go.
Which works better, a marinade or
Or a dry rub.
Does it depend on quality of beef?
Of course, it depends on the quality of the beef. I mean, if
You're buying a beautiful ribeye, why do you want to put a marinade on that?
You know, like that's such a beautiful cut of meat. You don't want to like get it all soggy with stuff.
We're eating steak, we want to taste steak, salt and pepper on these steaks, and I'm happy.
For a cheaper cut, which I don't normally do, I would use a wet marinade.
some of the acid and some of the enzymes from things like fruits, certain fruits, will start to break down some of the more tough connective tissue in the meat. So in some cases, it can work pretty well.
All right.
This is a question for Big Frank.
When cooking a steak in a grill pan or skillet,
Is the best method turning the steak every few minutes?
Until down to one's preference.
Or just turning it a couple of times. My opinion is that you want to move the steak as little as possible.
leave it alone. Allow it to sear.
Let it caramelize on one side, get some nice color, leave it alone.
Let it go.
I don't know what Frank would say, but I turn it every few minutes so that it maintains a more even cooking temperature from both sides.
Don't touch that baby.
I don't know. Seems to work.
1, 2. That's it.
Be patient, it'll be a delicious steak.
It also works really well for pork chops. Done.
What? That's it?
And that's everything.
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 There is to know.
About steak,
Well,
Almost everything.
pretty much.
Almost everything.
I'm sure there's a lot more to know.
aha. What's Lorenzo's favorite steak he's ever cooked? Ribeye. Ribeye, ribeye, ribeye. Ribeye, ribeye, ribeye. So stupid. Sorry.